Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a fascinating real-time collision between population math and national security. South Korea is hitting a demographic wall at absolute hyperspeed. And, they're doing this right next door to one of the most heavily fortified borders on the planet. So we're going to unpack exactly how this severe population decline is forcing a massive rethink of their entire defense strategy. The implications here, they are truly eye-opening for global security.
Let's jump right into a staggering figure from recent Reuters reporting, a 20% drop. South Korea's military has shrunk by a massive 20% in just 6 years. I mean, think about what that actually means operationally. We're not talking about a slow generational dip the planners can just comfortably adapt to over decades. No, this is a sudden, rapid hollowing out of a defense force. Operationally, a 20% loss translates into fewer border patrols, stretched logistics, and a compounding strain on current service members who literally have to pick up the slack. It fundamentally alters the balance of power, and it sets the stage for everything else we're going to look at today.
To understand how demographics are dictating defense, we're going to quickly cover a few key areas. We'll look at the shrinking military force, examine current conscription laws, map out the looming demographic cliff, neutrally analyze the debate around drafting women, and finally, explore the path forward.
All right, let's get into part one, a shrinking military force. Just 6 years ago, manpower was at a relatively stable baseline. Defense planners could pretty much count on predictable incoming cohorts. But today, well, that stability has just evaporated into that 20% reduction we just talked about. But the real alarm bell rings when you project just a tiny bit ahead to 2025. That trend line accelerates into what's projected to be a critical drop. Why does this matter to us? Well, if you follow geopolitics at all, you know that a rapidly shrinking force instantly degrades a nation's deterrent capabilities. In a highly militarized region like East Asia, demographic vulnerability isn't just a domestic headache, it is a massive geopolitical liability. Moving on to part two, let's look at the current conscription laws. So the foundational legislation here is the Korean Military Service Law. Based on official government guidance, this is what dictates exactly who has to serve. And we need to be clear, this isn't just a set of loose guidelines or friendly suggestions. It's a rigid, strict legal mandate that's formed the absolute backbone of South Korea's defense for decades. It explicitly outlines the duties, the length of service, and the very narrow conditions for any exemptions. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. This law was written back during an era of demographic surplus. It was built for a society that had an absolute abundance of youth. Today, that legal backbone is seriously buckling. Because, let's face it, a law is really only as strong as the physical reality it governs. The whole framework relies entirely on a very specific, mandated demographic pool to fill the ranks. Historically and legally, this burden has been placed squarely on the shoulders of the young male population. So the entire national defense apparatus assumes there's a constant, plentiful supply of young men coming of age every single year, ready to seamlessly replace those who are finishing up their service. It essentially creates two completely different columns, those legally bound to step up and everyone else who is exempt or volunteers. This setup introduces a profound structural fragility. Because what on earth happens when the one specific group you legally rely on starts to empty out? Which brings us to part three, the demographic cliff. For a long time, South Korea enjoyed a really robust male population pool. It easily and predictably met those strict quotas demanded by the military service law. But when you look at the projections for 2025, that pool literally collapses. We're not talking about a temporary cyclical dip here. It's a permanent structural contraction in the available numbers. Defense ministries can do a lot of things. They can optimize budgets, they can buy flashy new advanced tech, and they can streamline logistics. But you simply cannot draw water from a dry well. You can't draft soldiers who were never born. With this male population dropping so drastically by 2025, the military mathematically cannot sustain its required numbers under the current rules. The math here is cold, it's objective, and it's totally unforgiving. If your national defense relies on drafting a set number of men every year just to maintain basic readiness, and the total population of those men drops below your bare minimum requirement, well, the system just fundamentally breaks. This isn't about military strategy failing on the battlefield. Generals can always change tactics, right? But they can't magically conjure conscripts out of thin air to meet an arbitrary legal quota. This is pure, unavoidable demographic reality, completely overriding decades of military planning. Now, let's dive into part four, the debate around women in the military.
Because of this extreme demographic pressure, we're seeing a massive sociopolitical debate unfold. A recent foreign policy analysis hit the nail on the head, noting that demographic pressure, not necessarily some sudden political awakening, is what is forcing lawmakers to seriously reevaluate military conscription and the role of women in the military. It's incredibly rare to see raw mathematics override deeply entrenched cultural and historical military traditions, but that is exactly what's happening right now. This debate is no longer just a theoretical or academic exercise. It is intensely practical. The ranks desperately need filling, and the traditional pool is drying up way too fast for the status quo to survive.
So, as objective observers, we can see this incredibly complex debate is being driven by a convergence of undeniable pressures. First, you've got that sudden 20% personnel reduction we saw over just 6 years. Second, there's the sharp, looming decline in the eligible male population hitting in 2025. Third, there is absolutely a non-negotiable need to maintain national security against active regional threats. And fourth, all of this is forcing a total reevaluation of the Korean military service law. These factors compound on each other, creating an absolute pressure cooker for policymakers on both sides of the aisle. It's abundantly clear that this isn't about a singular political agenda. It's about the unyielding, compounding math of demographics.
Finally, let's look at Part 5, the path forward. Ultimately, what you should take away from this explainer is that math is forcing a massive legislative reckoning. It leaves us with a critical, undeniable question as we watch South Korea navigate toward 2025. What actually happens to a nation's defense strategy when its population can no longer fill the ranks? How will global powers rewrite their oldest, most foundational laws when national security collides head-on with a shrinking population? This isn't just an isolated hurdle for one peninsula, folks. It's a dramatic, real-time preview of the demographic crisis that global powers everywhere are going to face very soon. How do you defend a nation that is quite literally running out of people? I highly encourage you to keep exploring how these incredible demographic shifts are quietly, but fundamentally, reshaping our world.